Welcome to the Credit Edge. Ideas on time and working for a living. Let's get started.
This one is for you. For the person who knows what it feels like to wake up tired. That low hum of exhaustion before the day has even really started. We're dedicating today's deep dive to just one piece of writing, an essay that tries to, catalog the real cost of just staying in motion.
For us, yeah. For people who trade hours for wages.
Exactly. It's a very reflective piece,
Yeah.
really grounded in the reality of a working life, and it gets into that uncomfortable truth about the price we pay just to keep showing up.
It's an essential piece, I think, because it really reframes the whole conversation. It shifts our view of health from, just a biological thing that happens to us,
Right.
to seeing it as a core financial asset, a principle, that's the term it uses, like in the markets.
Principle you can borrow against.
Precisely. And the argument is that we treat this asset with a kind of negligence we would never, ever tolerate in our actual bank accounts.
So to get us started, to really set the foundation for this whole discussion, let's hear that core passage. It frames everything so well.
It does. The essay opens with this simple but really profound observation. It says, "Health is the first credit we borrow and the last debt we notice."
Wow. Just that one line, it feels like the beginning of an entire economic manifesto,
It really does.
It suggests this constant, invisible transaction that's happening just beneath the surface of our awareness. So before we get into the specifics, the actual costs, we should frame this with the lens we always use here, the Credit Edge philosophy. What's our mission today through that framework?
Our mission is to use that Credit Edge framework to really properly unpack this metaphor, this idea of treating health as a primary financial principle that we're constantly borrowing against.
Right.
The whole philosophy is built on these 5 principles, all designed to help us see the connection between our time, our labor, and the systems we live in. And today, we're focusing hard on that central idea that our choices are either building our capacity or they're incurring debt.
There's no middle ground.
There's no middle ground. So we'll explore the hidden systems and the compounding costs that the essay talks about, really looking at what that borrowed credit truly costs us. And understanding this is everything because, as the framework says, awakening is the foundation. You have to see the cost first before you can ever hope to change the trade.
Okay, let's start there. Let's unpack that initial metaphor.
Oh.
Health as credit and debt. The essay, right away, it just zeroes in on the core of a working life. It says, for us, the working class, health is the one thing we spend without looking at the balance.
And that right there is the defining statement of the whole exchange. It takes us straight to Credit Edge Principle 1. Time is the only real currency.
Explain that connection for us.
Well, think about it like this. Money is just. It's stored labor. It's a receipt for time we've already given to the system. But what allows us to do that labor, to perform it in the first place, it's our health. Our health is the finite capacity we have to move, to think, to do the work that earns the money.
So if I spend my health today, let's say I push through exhaustion, I skip lunch, I work an extra 2 hours, I'm not just using today's energy.
No, not at all.
I'm actively taking from the asset that's supposed to generate my income tomorrow and the next day and 10 years from now. I'm basically mortgaging my future ability to earn.
You are. That's the perfect word for it. You're mortgaging it. You are spending capacity you don't own yet. The essay is deeply, deeply concerned with the future hours we sacrifice for this present moment.
So if I have to spend, say, 2 hours tomorrow morning just recovering from today's exhaustion because I chose compliance or overtime, those 2 hours are future freedom I already spent.
You've pre-spent them. And you borrowed them at a really high, completely non-transparent interest rate. So when the essay says we spend health without looking at the balance, it means we just don't track the depletion of our main asset.
Which is our time and our capacity to think and move.
Right. Our capacity to create. It is the ultimate form of high-interest borrowing, and we don't even realize we've signed the papers until that bill finally arrives.
And I think that's where the real grounded question is for me. If we accept this, that we're borrowing against this principle all the time, then what's the real weight of that sentence? How many hours of future freedom are we actually sacrificing today for, immediate compliance or just to keep the lights on? Is it a one-to-one trade?
Oh, the essay suggests it's much, much worse than one-to-one.
Because of the interest.
Because of the compounding, which we'll get to. But the core principle here is about the trade itself. The system needs you to deliver the time now, right? Regardless of the internal cost to you.
It doesn't care how you feel. It cares that you're there.
Exactly. But the body always pays up front. Always, even if the really bad consequences don't show up for years. The trade is a present action work versus a future cost vitality, and the system is built to ignore that future cost.
And to keep us spending like that, we have to engage in this thing the essay calls inherent denial. It talks about the self-talk we use to justify it all. And it is so relatable. It says, we tell ourselves we will take care of it later, but later keeps moving, and the body keeps the record even when we pretend it doesn't.
This is a perfect illustration of Credit Edge Principle 5. Awakening is the foundation. The absolute first step of waking up is seeing this true cost. We do this deferred payment thing.
All the time.
I'll exercise more next week. I'll sleep better this weekend. I'll start eating healthy on Monday.
Monday. It's always Monday.
It's always Monday. We promise that later we'll pay the debt back, but the body, it is not a forgiving lender. It doesn't do deferred payments. The body records the transaction immediately.
So when we talk about the body keeping the record, we're not just talking about some potential heart attack 20 years from now. We're talking about something happening in real time.
Yes.
What does that record update actually look like in a worker's life, day to day?
It's the loss of quiet, foundational things. It's that constant feeling of running 5 minutes behind. It's the headache that you can't just shake off with a cup of coffee anymore, so now you need a painkiller, which then becomes another small debt the body has to process. It's the diminished emotional resilience, the shorter fuse you have at the end of the day, the inability to find patience for your kids or your partner, that ache, that fatigue, that lost bit of mobility, the brain fog. That is the body updating the ledger in real time, even while our conscious mind is trying to push the payment date further and further away.
We're in denial of a debt collector who never ever misses a filing date.
Never. The body is the most scrupulous, ruthless accountant we will ever have.
And its interest rates are not negotiable. And they start racking up the second we ignore the cost. And that denial, it's absolutely essential for the system to even function, isn't it? If everyone actually acknowledged the true cost of that skipped hour of sleep, the entire economy would grind to a halt.
It's the grease on the wheels. It's what allows for continuous output. If we pause to really feel the immediate costs, we would stop moving compliantly. And the system absolutely depends on that compliance. The promise of later is just a necessary self-deception that keeps us moving today.
Which brings us right to the daily reality of it. That idea of denial leads directly to how we manage our days. Let's move to the practical daily trades. The exchanges where all this theory gets very, very real for a working person. The essay sets the scene perfectly. It describes the start of the day. The alarm goes off, your back is stiff, your head feels heavy, yet you decide there is work to do and someone is counting on you to show up.
And that stiffness, that heavy head, that is the immediate physical declaration of the debt that's still outstanding from yesterday.
It's yesterday's bill.
It's yesterday's bill arriving with your alarm clock. And yet the decision you make isn't about your own maintenance. It's about an external responsibility. This is the practical definition of trading your time for compliance. The immediate external demand, the job, the shift, the boss, the family, it overrides the long-term maintenance of the self.
And the system profits from that.
It profits from that immediate demand precisely because it needs you present, not healthy. It needs you compliant right now, even if that compliance absolutely guarantees you'll be less efficient, less creative, and sicker in the future.
I think the reason this essay is so powerful is that it gets so specific about these trades. It's not talking about some grand philosophical idea. It's talking about the microtransactions that drain the principal day in and day out. It spells out exactly what we're trading.
It does. It says, we trade sleep for shifts. We trade rest for overtime. We trade quiet mornings for another hour of pay.
And just notice the escalating sacrifice there. It starts with the absolute core necessity, sleep. Then it moves to rest, which is strategic. And then it gets to the quiet morning. What is fundamentally lost when we give up that quiet morning?
What's lost is your strategic capacity, your emotional buffer for the day. Sleep is physical recovery. It restores your energy. Rest is the pause that allows for physical repair. But the quiet morning, that little bit of space before the world starts screaming for your attention, that is the mental space that preserves your clarity. It allows you to plan ahead. By trading that for an immediate hour of pay, you are giving up the time to think, to stretch, to eat a proper meal, to just transition into the day peacefully.
You're giving up your ability to be proactive.
Yes, you trade the capacity for proactive maintenance for a reactive position that guarantees you will be rushing and putting out fires for the next 12 hours.
So in financial terms, we're sacrificing our ability to make strategic long-term investments in ourselves.
Right.
In exchange for a tiny, immediate cash flow. It sounds like having an overdrawn bank account where every single little transaction now costs you a fee.
That is the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And this constant pressure is what introduces that critical metaphor of the slow leak. The essay highlights that health is not a crisis at first. It is a slow leak. This is the very nature of compounding debt. It's not a sudden explosion. It's a constant, almost imperceptible drip, drip, drip.
And what's so powerful is how the source material helps us identify the hidden costs of that slow leak. What does this invisible drain actually look like in the real, visceral experience of a worker, according to the essay? We have to ground this in what people actually feel.
The essay defines the slow leak with this. Just profound precision.
Yeah.
It doesn't use medical jargon. It uses the language of shared experience. It says the slow leak is defined by 3 things. A sigh that lasts longer than it used to. An ache we work through. A meal we skip because the day got away from us again.
That sigh, let's just stay there for a second. That is such an immediate physical picture of exhaustion. It's not just a quick exhale. It's an audible, almost involuntary declaration that you're in debt.
It is. It's the body announcing that its internal operating pressure is too high, and just letting off a little steam now requires more effort than it's supposed to.
And that sigh is usually connected to the next one, the ache we work through. The ache is the body's official warning signal. It's the check engine light.
It's a mandatory maintenance alert. And when we work through it, we are consciously, actively overriding that alert. It's the immediate expenditure of our principal just to keep the debt collector quiet for 1 more hour. We make a conscious choice to prioritize immediate output, keep the machine running over the long-term structural integrity of the machine itself.
We've just learned to accept a constant low level of discomfort as the price of admission to the working world.
We have. And then there's the skipped meal, the day that gets away from you. That represents the ultimate loss of control over your own rhythm. You're so busy servicing the debt, chasing all the demands, that you don't even have time to perform the most basic, fundamental maintenance required to keep the principle intact.
You're eating at your desk, or standing up in the kitchen, or not at all. Fuel becomes an afterthought.
And this is how the hidden costs pile up. The system profits from the fact that the price of all this neglect is spread out across these small, seemingly insignificant moments. No one looks at a long sigh and thinks, well, that just cost me 5 future years of vitality.
Of course not.
But those continuous tiny drawdowns are what eventually result in one massive visible expense. The slow leak is so hard to fight because it never gives you a clear, single crisis point to focus on, not until it's far too late. It's the constant drip that eventually drains the entire reservoir.
And the exhaustion just starts to feel normal, like it's just wear and tear, not active financial ruin.
Exactly. And that normalization is so critical to the system. Because the failure is slow and quiet and incremental, we are trained to just adjust to a lower and lower standard of vitality. We become compliant with our own depletion. We start accepting 70% capacity as our new 100%.
That is the key psychological trick, isn't it?
Yeah.
The compliance.
Yeah.
If the consequence of skipping sleep was, immediate catastrophic failure, we'd all stop doing it.
Immediately. But because the failure is delayed and the depletion is so gradual, the system can continuously extract maximum effort from us under the guise of just getting by. We adapt to the debt. And that adaptation is what makes us so vulnerable to the next stage, the compounding effect.
Right. This brings us directly to the mathematics of the debt. It's not just a straight line down. It accelerates. The essay gives us a stark warning about this. It says, neglect compounds quietly. What we ignore today becomes the bill we pay tomorrow. A rushed life carries interest.
If we connect this to Credit Edge Principle 4, peace compounds, we can see the whole mechanism working in reverse. Peace and disciplined maintenance, they build your freedom moment by moment. Small positive choices, like protecting your sleep, create positive returns, like better decisions, more resilience.
What neglect?
Neglect works exponentially in reverse. It builds debt moment by moment.
So the interest on a rushed life isn't just a bigger bill later on. It's the accelerated erosion of the principle itself.
Right.
Let's talk about that acceleration. If I work through an ache today, how does that actually guarantee that tomorrow's recovery will be harder and slower and more incomplete?
Because when you ignore the signal of that ache, you force your body to use energy that was supposed to be dedicated to maintenance and repair. You redirect it to output. This creates a functional deficit.
You're starting the next day already in the red.
Already in the red. So tomorrow, your body has to spend its immediate energy just to get you back to the depleted baseline you started at today. That deficit doesn't just stay the same, it gets bigger. Lack of sleep impairs your cognitive function, which makes you less efficient, which means you make more mistakes.
Which you then have to spend more energy to fix.
Exactly. And that corrective labor incurs more debt, which forces you to skip your maintenance again. You get locked into the self-perpetuating cycle where the debt accrues faster than you could possibly earn your capacity back. That is compound interest working against your primary asset.
The essay draws a direct financial parallel here. It connects this to investment strategies. It says, the markets show the same truth. Protect the principal and everything grows. Ignore the drawdowns, the losses deepen. Our health is no different.
Let's focus on that specific term, drawdowns. In the markets, a drawdown is a peak-to-trough decline. The critical thing to understand about drawdowns is that recovery is not linear. It's not one-to-one.
Right. If your portfolio loses 10%, you need more than a 10% gain to get back to where you were.
You need an 11.1% gain just to break even. And the deeper the drawdown, the exponentially larger the effort required to restore your original principal. A 50% loss requires a 100% gain to recover.
So if we apply that to health, a drawdown is that ignored ache, that skipped rest, that week of eating junk food because you're too tired to cook.
Yes. If you're operating at, say, 95% vitality and you ignore that 5% loss, climbing back to 100% requires more than a simple 5% recovery effort.
The human equivalent of that 11.1% gain is huge.
It's massive. It might take an entire weekend of strict structured rest or 2 full weeks of perfect sleep and nutrition just to undo the damage of a few days of neglect. But because we rarely have the capacity for that kind of recovery because the system demands we keep moving, that 5% loss doesn't sit still.
It gets worse.
It makes you less resilient, less efficient, and more prone to the next drawdown. And soon you're operating at 70% vitality, and getting back to 100% requires a monumental, sometimes professional intervention. We are talking about the accelerated erosion of your core vitality, the very capacity that allows you to manage any debt in the first place.
And the system, this demanding structure we comply with, it just lets this compounding continue unchecked until a crisis finally hits. The source material describes that inevitable moment when the bill arrives all at once, a scare, a collapse, a moment that demands every bit of interest we didn't know had been gathering.
And this abrupt arrival of the bill, it is so crucial to understanding how the system is designed. The question we asked earlier really comes to a head here. How does the system ensure the bill arrives this way, and who benefits from that?
Well, if the decline was steady and visible, if the system had to account for a worker needing consistent, gentle maintenance every day, it would lose all its efficiency. Maintenance costs time. It's unpredictable.
And this is CreditEdge principle 2. Systems profit from compliance. Systems are built for continuous compliant output. They need the engine running at full blast until the moment it fails, because managed maintenance costs the system time and therefore money.
They want to maximize output between breakdowns.
They want to maximize your output, period. When the worker ignores the compounding until it reaches that crisis point, the scare, a collapse, the system has successfully extracted the maximum possible utility from your capacity, including all your borrowed capacity, before you drop out. The sudden collapse is just the ultimate expression of the system demanding the full interest on all your borrowed time and energy in one painful, undeniable lump sum.
It's a transaction with zero loyalty. This system doesn't benefit from your longevity. It only benefits from your immediate total effort. And once your body finally collects its debt, the system just moves on to the next compliant worker.
Precisely. The collapse is simply the market correcting an unsustainable expenditure. The body collects its due even when we don't notice. That's the ledger settling, whether we were looking at it or not. And by the time that bill arrives, usually the cost is so immense that a true recovery of the original principal, that 100% health and vitality, is nearly impossible.
So let's zoom out a bit and look at this relationship between the worker and the external reward structure. Because this debt cycle, it's not an accident. The essay says it's by design. It's unflinching in its description of the system's indifference. It states the system understands this. It rewards our labor, not our longevity. It pays us for our hours, not our years.
This is the core transactional truth that we have to internalize. The only currency the system understands is the hours spent, the task completed, the metric hit right now. There is no line item on a company's balance sheet for sustained worker health unless it directly impacts next quarter's output. The system only cares, as the SE says, as long as we keep moving. And this reinforces a really toxic incentive structure. Compliance showing up no matter the internal cost is rewarded instantly with a paycheck. Awareness, pausing for maintenance, asking for better conditions is penalized in the short term with lost wages or, being labeled as unreliable.
So the most compliant, most dependable worker is, ironically, the one who is borrowing the most heavily against their future.
Exactly.
And that dependability, which we are all culturally trained to see as a virtue, is actually the mechanism the system uses to drain our principal faster.
Absolutely. And then the essay, it deepens the idea of expenditure. It moves beyond the purely physical debt to the relational and emotional costs, which frankly often carry the highest interest rates of all. It says, we spend energy we don't have. We spend strength we can't replace. We spend time we were meant to save for the people waiting at home.
The debt is moving from the personal ledger to the relational one. How does the Credit Edge framework account for that kind of non-financial emotional interest rate?
The relational debt is maybe the most painful form of compound interest there is. When you're forced to operate on spent energy, on empty, every necessary task, from your job to just basic self-care, it takes exponentially more effort. So what's left for the people waiting at home is not just less time.
It's a lesser version of you.
A diminished, exhausted, and often emotionally brittle version of yourself. Yes.
So you're sacrificing quality for presence. Your family, the people you love, they feel the debt as a lack of presence, even if you are physically in the same room with them.
That's it, exactly. You are physically present, but you are emotionally absent because all of your emotional buffering capacity was spent on compliance during the workday. The time that was meant for connection, for empathy, for joy, it gets sacrificed just to compensate for the spent energy and strength. We're spending the emotional buffer meant for our loved ones just to keep our own heads above water.
And the debt compounds in the most intimate parts of our lives.
It does. It leads to strain and misunderstanding and emotional distance.
And the root of all this, the essay argues, is the mindset we were all trained into. This deep cultural programming that makes us willingly participate in our own depletion. It says, we learned early to push through, to be the one they can depend on, to carry the weight without complaint.
And this cultural training is the self-policing mechanism. It's how the system gets us to do its work for it. We were taught that pausing is a weakness, that asking for help is a failure, that complaining is a moral failing.
Right. Never call in sick. Stay until the job is done, no matter what.
All those old maxims. They might sound virtuous, but they are the core mechanism that fuels the compounding neglect this essay describes. It was a survival skill that might have been necessary in one context, long ago, but now it's the primary tool the system uses to ensure our continuous compliance.
We internalize the system's demand for speed and output, and we become our own harshest bosses. We actively police ourselves, making sure that slow leak continues, all because we believe that the pain, the fatigue, the exhaustion, it has to be pushed aside in order to be a dependable person. We have learned to equate self-depletion with moral virtue.
And that is the ultimate systemic maneuver, realizing that we are actively participating in our own depletion based on this inherited cultural programming. That's the final piece of the awakening. We've been trained to see maintenance as a reward we earn after the work is done, not as the requirement that makes the work possible in the first place.
And that's why the idea of rest feels so illicit almost for so many working people. Because if rest is truly necessary, then the entire structure that demands continuous output starts to look incredibly fragile. If rest is a requirement, the whole system has to slow down.
And slowing down means losing its profit margin. So the cultural narrative has to maintain that rest is a luxury, an optional amenity, something you only do when your output has earned it for you. This keeps us perpetually chasing a finish line that keeps moving, always in debt, always compliant.
So we've dissected the debt, the drawdowns, the hidden costs. We have to now define the true comprehensive price of this borrowed health, as the essay sees it. It summarizes the core philosophical statement, and it moves the focus away from the sudden event. The price is not the illness that arrives suddenly, but the years we lose slowly, the clarity that fades one exhausted morning at a time, the peace we postpone.
This is the definitive statement on the long-term cost. It centers the whole discussion on the cumulative loss. The most expensive trade isn't the trip to the emergency room. It's the gradual sacrifice of your intellectual and emotional principle, your clarity and your peace.
We postpone peace.
We postpone peace because we are always running to service a debt we took on just trying to keep up with yesterday's demands.
So if we're postponing peace, what's the opposite of that? If awareness is the goal here, What concrete shift in perspective does the essay offer to start reclaiming that lost time and capacity, to interrupt that compliance cycle?
The shift is in recognizing the true immediate cost of every single trade you make. This is Credit Edge Principle 3. Awareness is reclamation. Awareness changes everything because it allows you to see the pattern, and it allows you to interrupt the automatic response of just complying. It forces you to ask the question, is this 1 hour of overtime really worth 3 hours of lost peace and a 5% drawdown on my core asset?
It reclaims autonomy by reintroducing choice. When you're just complying, you feel like you have no choice. But when you're aware of the true trade, you are faced with a stark choice, even if both options are hard.
And the source material gives us very clear prescriptions for this reclamation. It frames them as non-negotiable beliefs, not optional instructions, but foundational truths. It says we must believe that maintenance is not luxury, that rest is not weakness, that caring for the body is a way of protecting every future hour we still hope to live.
That reframes maintenance as a defensive financial strategy.
I love that.
If caring for your body is protecting every future hour, then rest stops being a self-indulgence, and it starts being a mandatory investment in your principal.
It ensures that your capacity for future labor stays high and, crucially, that the compounding debt slows down. Maintenance is not a reward you get when the work is done. It is the fundamental requirement that allows the work to continue sustainably. It is the strategic move you make against the compounding interest of neglect.
And it breaks that cultural programming, the one that equated rest with weakness. By defining rest as a protective measure, you shift the entire narrative from morality, I'm a good worker if I push through, to strategic necessity. I am a good planner if I protect my assets.
And we have to go back to that market analogy one last time to make the final connection. Health is the principle. It's what makes every other pursuit you have in life possible. The life we want, the freedom we dream of, the peace we work for. All of it requires the principle, your body and your time, to be protected. You can't retire debt if you've destroyed your ability to earn, and you can't enjoy peace if your body is constantly screaming for payment on overdue interest.
So health isn't the goal of a working life then. It's the protected, non-negotiable fuel that allows a working life to achieve any goal beyond just mere survival.
It is the foundation, and we have to start treating it that way, recognizing the true cost of spending it without ever looking at the balance. To bring this deep dive full circle, we have to reiterate the essay's final, calm, grounded insight. It summarizes the two competing compounding forces we've talked about today. It says, health compounds quietly, neglect compounds faster. Awareness slows the loss.
That's the mathematics of autonomy right there. You have to understand the speed of neglect, how fast that interest is really stacking up, to truly appreciate the defensive value of awareness. The essay concludes that health is not the reward for all your hard work, it's the foundation. And that final line for reflection, it's the only place we can possibly begin. Awareness is the beginning.
If health is the first credit we borrow, then awareness is the first payment we make toward repaying that debt. And that payment isn't made with more hours of labor. It's made with a moment of mindful pause, a moment of recognition, and a conscious shift in your priority.
So for you, listening, the person who is maybe carrying a stiff back and a heavy head into the day, we'll leave you with this grounded challenge. If awareness is the beginning, what is the first small trade? The sleep you can claim back, the 10 minutes of rest you can take, the quiet morning you can protect. What is the first thing you will reclaim today to protect your principle? Thank you for diving deep with us. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Credit Edge. Remember, your time matters. See you next episode.